has arrived, we can start with the session.
All right. A very good evening to everyone. Dr. Jain, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good evening to everyone. My name is Rupal, and I will be moderating today's session. I'm really happy to be here on behalf of Think India Pune, E-Conclave, and it is an honor to introduce to you all our speaker for this session, Dr. Sanjay Jain. He will be speaking on enabling the Constitution, asserting the rights of dignity, equality of persons with disabilities. Dr. Sanjay Jain is an associate professor and additional charge principal at ILS Law College, Pune. And he is also the director at the PhD Center. Yes, please, participants, please refrain from muting the moderator as well as the speaker. He has completed his PhD in law and has a teaching experience of 23 years. Sir has received a national award in the employment category at the hands of then the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, in 2004. Sir has written 6 books, published more than a dozen of articles and papers, and participated in more than 100 international, national, state-level seminars, conferences, and workshops. Sir has actively participated in the process of drafting of newly proposed law, Persons with Disability 2016. He is a role model amongst persons with disability and even for able-bodied people because of his willpower and firm determination. It is a pleasure to have you with us, sir. So sir will be speaking for about 40 minutes. Then after 40 minutes, we will be taking the questions from the chat box. I will be reading out the questions. Please mute your video as well as your audio for a smooth session. Sanjay Jain, sir, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rupal. And I thank the Think India team and Rugved and others who extended this invitation to me to have a dialogue with you on some contemporary legal and socio-political issue. And therefore I thought that why should I not use this opportunity to conscientize the youth, because this is a platform where mostly I suppose youth supposedly participate, and this platform is by and large meant for the youth. So I thought that why should I not engage with all of you, at the same time why I also should not speak to my mind on a very telling and a very important topic, enabling the Constitution, asserting the right of dignity, equality of persons with disability. So what I want to do, as she has told me to speak for 40 minutes. So initially, let me briefly explain to you the concept of disability, because there is a very wrong notion about disability which all of us generally nurture, all of us adopt. Generally, by disability, we mean that a person having mentally or bodily defects, then he is disabled. In other words, because I cannot see, because I have total blindness, therefore I am disabled. But friends, when you look at disability in this way, that is to say, when you locate the disability in the bodily difference of a person, then you are assuming that disability lies in the body of an individual, as if disability is an embodied concept. Whereas in reality, disability isn't an embodied concept, because despite bodily differences, despite physical or mental variations, human beings can function efficiently. They can function effectively if the environment surrounding them is made barrier free. If the environment surrounding them uh, does not uh, 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 negatively interact with these bodily defects. So it goes therefore that mostly disability is distinct from the bodily differences. Bodily differences are technically referred as impairments. So impairments are there in everybody's body. For example, if you have a height which is less than normal, or if your body is less than fit in terms of physical fitness, right? Still, you are disabled. But in normal parlance, you will not be characterized as disabled, because that is not what is meant in normal parlance or common parlance by disability. So, on the other hand, if somebody cannot walk, if somebody has a problem in moving his hands, or if his bones are weak, or if he if there are cognitive issues, then you call such a person disabled. So basically, impairments and disability are two distinct concepts. I want to emphasize this. Impairments generally are the part of the body, whereas the disability is part of the socio-economic, political, cultural environment. Disability comes into play because of the external barriers. For example, why a blind person is disabled? Okay, I am impaired. I am visually impaired. I cannot see. But why I am disabled? I am disabled because the world outside is full of barriers. For example, I don't have books which I can read in Braille like the one which I'm having. I don't have many such books made available to me in Braille. Roads outside roads for example Pune city are not disabled friendly. For example, if I want to walk on a road, I want to go to buy a particular thing on a shop, there is hardly any accessibility everywhere. The environment, the physical, the built up environment is disability unfriendly. Therefore, what is making me disabled is not necessarily my impairment, but the environment. Had the environment been disabled friendly, had the environment been accessible, had the environment been sensitive to my needs as a person with disability, I would not have struggled. So, therefore, the first takeaway of this talk should be make a very clear distinction between impairment and disability. An impaired person may not necessarily be disabled, or his disability may definitely be reduced, or he may not feel, he may feel only little disabled if we are able to take steps and make the surrounding on or about us, on surrounding nearby our station to be accessible, to be barrier free. That is one aspect. The second aspect is why we attach so much importance to the personality issues. Why we feel that if a person cannot see, the same should be highlighted. Why we feel that if a person is hard of hearing, or if a person is speech impaired, why we need to highlight the same. Do you highlight, for example, the fact that a particular person does not know English? Or do you, for example, highlight the fact that a particular person, despite coming to college, hardly attend classes? So what is so special in highlighting the bodily defects compared with other, equally problematic characteristics, if you were to say so. If disability is problematic, not knowing English may also be problematic, not knowing computers may also be problematic, not attending classes may also be problematic. All these things may also be problematic, but still, why we don't pay much attention to the latter, and why only we want to pinpoint at the physical disabilities? Precisely because of the societal understanding of disability. Society has attached uh, stigma to the status of disability. If I am blind, uh, my blindness is due to maybe sins I have committed in my earlier birth, or I am disabled, I am blind because, uh, for example, my family background was not uh, good, so on and so forth. Somehow, you will stigmatize. You will not take it as quote unquote natural if I am born as a disabled, be it in terms of visual impairment or hard of hearing or speech impairment. So, whenever a person acquires disability, a tremendous amount of trauma surrounds him, as if hell has fallen on him or her, as if his life has been brought to an end abruptly, as if for him now there is hardly any movement further. So, this tragedy-oriented understanding of disability is main reason for stigmatizing the disabled. I would like to argue that it is a complete myth to stigmatize a person with disability like this. There is hardly any scientific basis to take a position that, okay, if you are disabled, there is some unknown reason, there is some past sin, there is some past birth karma which is responsible for your status, etc., etc. On the other hand, I personally believe, and this is now the belief also of the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability, that just like any other variation in society, just like any other differentiations, disability is also a differentiation. You have to simply take it as one of the differentiations and nothing else. Now, uh, uh, for example, another very simplistic way in which we stigmatize disabled is the use of language. For example, we willy-nilly keep on saying love is blind, or why you are doing it, why are you blind, why you do it blindly, don't give lame excuses. So what you are trying is, using such a foul language, you are trying to belittle the status of the disabled, be it blindness, be it lameness. So, and as they say, language is a vehicle of thought. So, such language, we perpetuate the lesser human being status of disabled, as if by becoming disabled, I am a lesser human being. I deserve a less favorable treatment. I am inferior. So, friends, these are all social creations. These are all cultural creations, right? Okay, if you want to get married, suppose you are two, three brothers and sisters, one of your brother and or sister is disabled, one of your sibling is, for example, disabled, then hide the information, because otherwise you may not get married. Because if the other side come to know that there is a disabled person in your family, then they may not probably think to have social relations with you. So these are all socio-cultural creations, and to use the language of sociology, this is a very typical case of socio-cultural construction of disability. And law does not come from heaven. After all, law is not a magic wand. Law is a human artifact. Human beings are responsible for creation of law, and therefore this socio-cultural creation dominates the law. And therefore, I want to argue that because the understanding of the society about the disabled is very, very ableist, the understanding of the mainstream, the so-called non-disabled is very typical, because they consider persons with disability as lesser human beings, as unfit, as unproductive. The same point has also spilled over into the process of law, legal processes. For example, look at Indian Constitution, a very telling document. You know, we celebrate Constitution of India as one of the most towering instruments when it comes to conferment of rights and duties on citizens. But what this Constitution has given to the persons with disability? Is there any provision, for example, in Fundamental Rights Chapter, Part 3, prohibiting discrimination on the ground of disability? Now, my take is that although there is a faint reference to the directive principle, to the to the disability in directive principles of state policy in terms of providing assistance alongside other weaker sections, but when it comes to recognition, when it comes to recognizing the persons with disability as equal citizens, the Constitution is awfully wanting. For example, look at the provisions pertaining to eligibility to become ministers, provisions pertaining to eligibility become President of India, or, for example, to assume the offices of judges. Everywhere, disability is a roadblock. For example, it is very clearly mentioned in the Constitution that a person with unsoundness, a person who is of unsound mind, is ineligible to either contest election or to assume the office of a minister or to even occupy the position of a judge. But the matter does not end here. Owing to if you suffer from physical incapacity, quote unquote, under Article 317, Clause C, President of India can immediately remove you from the membership or chairmanship of Union Public Service Commission. So as soon as you acquire a disability, even if it is a physical disability, you may be removed immediately by President of India from the office of chairman UPSC or member UPSC, as if disability becomes the mark of disqualification. Why? Then similarly, in Singhal's case, Supreme Court has very clearly stated that if a person who is occupying the office of governor, if he suffers from any physical incapacity, then he can be removed by the President of India. Similarly, a judge of Supreme Court or even the High Court can be impeached or removed by the President of India after following the process of impeachment, apart from other grounds on the ground of physical incapacity. But what exactly is meant by physical incapacity? What exactly is meant by unsoundness of mind? I mean, how do you know that a particular person has unsound mind? What is the degree? To what degree? What is the degree intelligence one must possess to have sound mind? Should everybody have mind like Albert Einstein, for example, to say that okay, he or she has a sound mind? So this whole idea of creating hierarchy between the non-disabled and disabled, and somehow, somehow excluding the disabled. Now the logic is very interesting. It is said that okay, you are as disabled, we care for you as disabled, we want to help you, we protect you, this, that. But in my opinion, these are all symptoms of paternalism. These are all symptoms of sympathy. These are all symptoms of, showering kindness. If I were to use a very blunt language, you want to somehow somehow create a shell of sympathy around people with disability, so that they are not able to break it and they are not able to move forward. Uh, Now, uh, can we interpret constitution alternatively? That is the question I want to engage. Yes, I argue that why constitution has not spoken about the disability. I have already told you that it has not spoken much about disability. If I were to interpret this silence positively, then I may argue that okay, when the constitution was being framed, the framers therefore they decided to maintain silence, and definitely maintenance of silence cannot mean that you should exclude people with disability from the zone of consideration, right? Because just like non-disabled citizens, we are also the part of the citizenry. Therefore, silence or omission of mentioning does not necessarily result in exclusion. The second prong of the argument may be, although explicit mention is not there, implicitly disability is covered. For example, Article 14, every person in India shall enjoy equality before law and equal protection of law. Or Article 21, no person shall be deprived right to life and personal liberty save as procedure established by law. So here, the word person is used, which is a very neutral, which is a ideologically neutral word, and person would definitely include the persons with disability. Moreover, I would also like to argue that although disability is very constitutional location of disability so far as lawmaking is concerned, the location is very awkward. We are sandwiched between, a burial ground and intoxicating liquor, in the state list. I think if I remember correctly, it is the entry 8 somewhere mentions disability, and it is in between the burial ground and intoxicating liquor. So it's an unfortunate location. But nevertheless, the case is made out, or case can be made out for the proposition that states are empowered to make laws to empower disabled. And unfortunately, none of the state governments in India have taken this obligation seriously. And Parliament of India only has legislated that too in fulfillment of its commitment which it incurred by way of ratification of an international treaty, United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. So I want to ask this very seminal question to all state governments: why you only rely on Parliament when it comes to empowerment of disability? Do you rely on Parliament when it comes to empowerment of upward classes? For example, when it came to giving reservations to Marathas, you immediately you went rock, stock, and barrel, and you went for the reservations. So what is the problem in taking up the cause of the disabled? And in fact, my argument is that inaction on part of state government is a major omission. Inaction is also omission, and omission is equally culpable, right? Culpability does not merely lie in unlawful actions, but unlawful omissions, unlawful inactions also are equally problematic. Now, in my opinion, there is tremendous potential in our constitution if it is used creatively, just like it has been used creatively by Supreme Court vis-a-vis other weaker sections, to provide assistance to the disabled, to empower disabled. In fact, Supreme Court has done so in number of cases. However, let me also say that so far as empowerment of the disabled are concerned, one of the way forward is their political empowerment. Now, with the enactment of 73rd and 74th Amendment, you know, reservations have been provided in favor of women and SC/ST in panchayats and municipalities. Now, my argument is on same lines why state governments have not taken steps to provide reservations to PWDs, because persons with disability as a community are indeed part of backward class of the citizens, because we are socially backward, we are economically backward, we are politically completely isolated. Now, if you look at the Constitution 243D clause 6 or 243T clause 6, it clearly empowers the legislature to provide reservation in favor of backward class of citizens in panchayats and municipalities. It is an enabling provision. But because the state government does not want to be inclusive, because it wants only to celebrate ableism, as I call it only wants to celebrate the potentials of tabs, as I call it. Tabs means temporarily able-bodied, and I will explain in a minute what I meant by temporarily able-bodied. But this tab celebration, this tab obsession, this able-bodism is clearly reflected in the mindset of those who are at the helm of affairs. And therefore, despite these clear provisions, despite the potential for reservations in panchayats and in municipalities, because in my opinion, when you take such steps and make disabled the part of the decision making process, the things will take a positive turn. But the able-bodism in this country is so pervasive that under its influence, we do not simply want to recognize the fact that, okay, somebody who is different from us can really be part of us, right? That is the real problem. For example, even if you appoint somebody on a position of authority, and my example included, attempts will be made to continuously undermine the authority of such a person. So, although at one hand you hold a particular appointment, but because you are holding this appointment as a disabled, the focus will not be on your position, but focus will be on your personality. Whereas the focus should be on the position a particular person is holding, and therefore focus should be on how he can empower the particular department where he is holding such a position. But no, because I am a disabled, the focus will not be on my department, but focus will be on my personality. And same thing, despite these two provisions which I have pointedly told you, and these are very clear provisions, governments would keep on misguiding the public, misguiding the disabled, that okay, you have to amend the constitution in order to provide reservations to the disabled. I understand in parliament and state legislatures you need amendments, but when it comes to panchayats and municipalities, you don't need amendment. Now let me just in the last leg of my talk, let me also talk about judiciary, because we celebrate judiciary a lot. We believe that judiciary being sentinel on the quay when it comes to protection of fundamental rights, it is argued that it has done a lot when it comes to people with disabilities. Yes, indeed, judiciary has handed down some very important judgments, and one of the most important judgments which was handed down by the Supreme Court was in 1986, when it empowered the people with disability to appear in important competitive exams like IAS and IPS, and I salute Supreme Court for the same. But has Supreme Court really walked the talk totally? And whether the stand of the Supreme Court is completely discrimination free? Now again, I want to salute Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, who recently hoped that sooner or later a blind person would become the judge of Supreme Court of India. I really salute, sir, your prophecy. But what is the real scenario? The real scenario is that Supreme Court has the monopoly to decide who should be the part of the judiciary. And while clinging to this monopoly, Supreme Court would even not be bothered to read the Persons with Disability Act, Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. And this is exemplified by one of its recent decision, which is a dreadful decision, if I may call it. It is a notorious decision. In Surendra Kumar's case, Supreme Court very clearly held that a person whose blindness is more than 30%, such a person is ineligible to hold, ineligible even to compete for the position of lower court judge, leave alone he's being he's suitable. So forget about suitability, even eligibility of a person. Eligibility, in order to make a person eligible to compete for the position of judge, his blindness should not be more than 30%. From where Supreme Court got this? Because if you read the Persons with Disability Act 2016, and particularly clause R, section 2, clause R, I quote this clause: person with benchmark disability means a person with not less than 40% of a specified disability, where specified disability has not been defined in measurable terms, and includes a person with disability where specified disability has been defined in measurable terms as certified by the certifying authority. So when a disability is defined in measurable terms, like blindness has already been defined in measurable terms in the schedule of rights of persons with disability, then you cannot count such disability in terms of percentage. This is a law laid down by Parliament of India, which is the highest lawmaking body. But the great Supreme Court does not want to believe what Parliament has to say about disability. And in fact, the great Supreme Court want to legislate on disability. And in fact, in Surendra Kumar's case, the great Supreme Court enacts an entirely new law by redefining disability vis-a-vis providing entry to the blind people in the judiciary, as if judiciary solely belongs to Supreme Court, and as if Supreme Court is the sole gatekeeper to decide who should be inside it and who should be outside it. So we have argued very vehemently before every forum that this is a dreadful judgment. This is a judgment which is worse than Indira Nehru Gandhi, which is worse than all its judgment. In fact, in my opinion, it is worse than Shivkant Shukla's case. Because what Supreme Court has done in this case is it enacted a law by way of redefining disability illegally, and it applied the said law in the instant case retrospectively. General rule of law is that when a law is enacted, it should be applied, it should be enforced prospectively. So, and what court says, interestingly, why a blind person should not be appointed as a judge, according to Supreme Court, if his blindness is more than 30%, because blind person cannot read. Now I am reading in front of you. They say blind person cannot write. I have written this, and therefore I am able to read. They say blind person cannot observe. They say that as a judge, if you are not able to see properly, you will not be able to observe the mannerisms of witnesses. I want to ask whether all able-bodied judges, whether they have scanners in their body. Really, when you hear the case, are you looking at the documents or are you trying to look at the faces? Are you trying to look at the facial expressions of the witnesses? And what is the role of witnesses? To what extent witnesses really affect the trial? Because mostly the trial is between the two parties. In fact, how frail the argument of Supreme Court is becomes clear from the testimony of no less than Justice Z.M. Yaqub, who is the judge of who retired as a judge of Constitutional Court of South Africa. That means Constitutional Court is equivalent to Supreme Court. And he very categorically challenged all the able-bodied judges. They should prove to him, they should show the data empirical data which really demonstrate that okay, to observe the mannerisms of witnesses, you should be able to necessarily see. For example, let me just give you an example. Suppose you ask me, how are you? I can easily make out that you are talking with me very happily. On the other hand, if you say, how are you? I will immediately realize that, okay, your tone is very arrogant. So why do you assume that merely by looking at face alone, you can observe the mannerism? There are other ways and means by which mannerisms can be gathered. So why do you want to monopolize your seeing ability? Why do you want to monopolize your so-called extraordinary ability of seeing, as if without seeing, without eyes, everything is lost? Justice Yaqub very clearly stated, and I endorse his point. What matters when you assume the position of judge is not whether you have sight. I think what matters is whether you have vision. I think Supreme Court's decision in V. Surendra Kumar case is a textbook example of lack of vision. I mean, who are you to deprive us of our legitimate demand, our legitimate claim to be the part of the government? And judiciary is inclusive. Judiciary is one of the important parts of the government. So who are you to stop us from assuming occupying that part? So I want to say while concluding my lecture, while concluding my thought, that youngsters, I have a lot of faith in youngsters. And in fact, I must also admit, and I must very candidly tell all of you, that why I have been able to march forward and reach where I have today reached, mainly because of friends like you. I remember how I used to be helped by so many classmates when I used to do my LLB, and they never made me realize that I have disability. In fact, most of them, they said that disability lies in the mind. So whether or not a particular person is disabled is a byproduct of brain. Nobody is disabled. I mean, when you look at Stephen Hopkins, for example, can you make out? I will just conclude by telling you a short story of Stephen Hopkins. Stephen Hopkins, when he became perennially ill, he went to doctor, and doctor told him, look, Mr. Hopkins, you have only 6 months. And he did not believe his ears. He said to doctor, my God, I'm telling, I have yet to give my best. You are saying that I have only 6 months. Doctor said, but what can be done? And believe you all me, Hopkins lived for next 20 years. And I think all his remarkable accomplishment came in these later 20 years. So I remember another interesting story of Napoleon Bonaparte when he went to an astrologer showing his hand. Can you tell me who am I going to be? And the astrologer, just seeing the hand, said, okay, this is an ordinary hand. And he just twisted his hand and then again tell like this, and then again tells the astrologer, can you please see and tell me again? And he said, okay, this is the hand of an emperor. So I think everything depends upon willpower. Everything depends on your instinct. I don't believe that sight matters much. I don't think when, for example, Shoaib Akhtar bowls a delivery to Sachin Tendulkar, his eyesight alone matters. What matters is his willpower to hit the six during the World Cup, right? His determination to hit the six. So, okay, the sight might have played its role, but more than sight, I think what played its role is the vision. So I think I would like to extend my very warm thanks to the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak to my mind, open up myself, and have my points across you on this interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the inspiration, insightful, and detailed knowledge on the topic. I would now like to speak out the questions from the chat box.
Yeah.
So Mansi Desai asks, Sir, can you discuss what kind of social security measures have been undertaken by the Indian government favoring the disabled persons?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that in the Indian government can favor anybody. Government is not supposed to favor. Government is supposed to serve because it is a government of limited powers. But when it comes to measures you're asking, there are measures like reservations in employment. For example, 5% reservation, 4% reservations in favor of physically handicapped, mentally handicapped, physically disabled, mentally disabled, blind, and low vision, and multiple disabled. So 4% employment reservation, then 5% reservation in educational institutions. And then there is a stipulated percentage on all empowerment schemes like Nehru Awas Yojana or National Rural Health Mission, etc. So all empowering schemes, including Manrega, everywhere there is a provision for quota for the persons with disability. In some states, even pension is given to the people with disability. But when it comes to observance of system, unfortunately, there is no system. So whoever thinks, whatever thinks, okay, it should be done, it is done. But we don't have a very clear and cohesive empowerment program. Social security should not be provided as a dole, right? Social security must be provided with a purpose, with an object. So that purpose and object is lacking. Yeah.
Sir, can I ask a question, sir?
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I am Dr. Shivraj Shastri from Karnataka, sir.
Yeah.
Gulbarga.
Yes.
And I am working as an assistant professor in Kannada literature, sir.
Right.
I must be very thankful for your scholarly expression, scholarly speech delivered by you. And sir.
Yeah. I'm listening.
Yeah. And I should be very thankful for I respect your scholarly speech, scholarly minded one. And my question, my deliberations will be, any notifications from UGC and job notifications, there will be visually impaired and blind, low vision people. Actually, low vision people, in fact, are coveting they are snatching the opportunities of the totally blind or visually impaired persons. How the problem should be solved according to you, scholarly, sir?
Well, law is very clear. If you read the Constitution very clearly says that reservation must be provided to those who are the weakest amongst the weaker, those who are the most vulnerable. Therefore, ideally and normatively, legally, preference must be given to the severely disabled. And severely disabled means blind persons.
But authorities are preferring low vision people only.
No, but that is not permissible under law. But what they do in the garb of the fact that they would say that, okay, although blind people are eligible, they are not suitable, right? There are two things. You may be eligible, but you have to also to be suitable. So when it comes to suitability, they will just create a farce.
Is there no remedy for this one, sir? Social
there is
injustice?
a remedy. You have to fight. There is no other remedy, right? And when anger bursts, like what is happening in New York, what is happening in Washington. So I tell you, no population, no section of population should be taken for granted by any government. Right? Yeah.
Hi, sir. Rashekha here.
Yeah.
So please carry on.
Rashekar, go ahead. Yeah.
I just joined, so I just wanted to greet you. Please go ahead, sir. I'll talk later.
I've finished. I've answered. Yeah.
All right. I will go ahead with the next question. Adidev Verma asks, the beneficiary policy for disabled that is still prevalent is of the 1970s Sanjay Gandhi scheme. Do you think the political parties are busy focusing on vote banks rather on the people who need support?
Well, I personally feel that if you are expecting political parties to be the people, I mean, Angels Association, it is your mistake. So our fault is also there. People with disability, we are not, as people with disabilities, we are deeply divided cult, right? We are not organized. So we need to have somebody as Martin Luther amongst ourselves, right? And myself is also included when I blame disability. So we have to be a meaningful pressure group, because nobody would offer you anything on platter. They will only offer you platitudes, right? So whether you want to live on sympathy or whether you want to live on empathy is our take, right? The problem with the disability community is we are not assertive. We are not trying to assert ourselves, right? We are very, very uh, uh, we are we are we are we are very narrow in our even agitational mode, right? Whenever we are in agitational mode also, we are very, very narrow. So we have to open up, and slowly but surely, I think platforms like NPRD, National Platform for Rights of Persons with Disability, is a good platform. We have to empower that platform, right?
Ah,
We have to listen to people like Murtidhar Agrawal, right? And this cross disability unity, right? We are fighting amongst ourselves, and government wants that you should fight. So cross disability unity is another important issue. Why we
All
should
right.
say that low vision and blind should fight? Why can't we take both sections as complement of each other, right? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, Vanshika Podar asked, so
Yeah.
do we agree that empowerment of the disabled is necessary? On the other hand, issue with the reservations that come up for disabled lie that they should be done in a way that persons with disability may pay lesser. Why should it not be that there are a fixed number of seats and maybe a cut in the fee structure? But why should it be said that people who are disabled should have a lower cutoff when it comes for examination?
Well, I agree that there should not be lower cutoff for people with disability. I take that point. But what about the lower cutoff for the SC/ST? So you want to stop lower cutoff for people with disability, you also stop for lower cutoff for other sections. That is one. And number two, I don't think with lower cutoff, even if you get admission and even if you obtain a degree, you become employable. Most of the people with disability with degrees, they are not employable. This is the reason precisely. So I always tell my students who are disabled that have ambition to become somebody bigger than a small peon or a telephone operator or idle bank officer, right? So you have to lit up your ambition. So normatively, I agree that there should not be lower cutoff for anybody. But then why are you singling out the disabled?
Okay, thank you, sir. Asha asked, so do you think it's high time legislative should remove congenital idiocy and lunacy as a disqualification for asking participation of co-partnership property?
Absolutely. But the problem is they will not remove lunacy or idiocy because it is endemic to their institution itself, right? So the problem is not with the so-called unsound mind people with disability. The problem with those who lack soundness of mind while legislating, right? Uh, because can there be any person who is completely sound throughout his life, right? So I always give that example of Shashi Kapoor's film, wherein he said that you have to be jungly sometime, right? You have to be mad sometimes. So would you just disqualify that person as person with unsound mind? So this whole business, branding somebody as a person with unsound mind itself is a scandalous business. And sooner we get rid of it, better it would.
Okay. Praneeth asks, "Sir, please put some light on Ira Singhal's case."
Ira Singhal, okay. Uh, I think Ira Singhal is a role model in terms of cracking the IS exam, despite of her perennial disability. I'm using the layman's language, perennial disability. For me, she was a woman with extraordinary willpower, because I think she twice she was able to crack the ice, but initially she did not get what she wanted. She again appeared and got it. And she is a self-made lady. She was an IT Wiskin. She made her career out of IT, made herself independent for 5-6 years, and then cracked the IS exam and fulfilled her ambition. So I think Ira Singhal, for me, is Stephen Hopkins of India. I also want to attract your attention to another friend of mine who is visually challenged, and she is now in France. She is part of Indian Foreign Services. Zeno, Zeno, Beno. Her name is Beno. You can just Google it. And she's doing a phenomenal job. But why you want to go to France? I have a friend in Mahabaleshwar whose name is Bhatia, second name, and he's running a business of candle making. He makes fancy candles. And for a change, I think we should thank Malia, because Malia has bought so many designed beer bottles from him, candle designed. Reliance company purchases all its gift items from Mr. Bhatia, and Bhatia employs more than 1,000 blind people. His turnover runs in crores. So you have many blind people, many people with disability who are enterprising, who would definitely expose the so-called able-bodied, whom I call temporarily able-bodied. Why I call temporarily able-bodied? Because one can become disabled anytime. There is a storm, you break your leg and you become disabled, right? There is a storm, there is some accident, you lose your hand and you become disabled. Whereas a disabled person can become able-bodied. The chances of disabled person becoming able-bodied are more compared with a person acquiring disability from able-bodiedness. So therefore, I always say that it's only temporarily able-bodiedness, right? Thank you.
Right.
Can
Hello,
I
sir.
speak, sir?
Hello,
Can I
sir.
speak?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello, sir. This is Rajashekar of Hyderabad.
Yeah.
So often we talk about all the lacunas, but how do we start some action on the ground? That is very important. And we need to really come out with strategies with which we could really take things forward, take things to a different level. I think we can keep on finding the lacunas forever and ever. But what lacks, as I agree with you, is the fact that in the Indian context, the community is divided. But somehow we need to find out a formula which will go beyond the division and get a point of unity and commonality. I think that's the way forward, sir. So we need to really think about how we can bring about a unifying strategy among the community. This is what I feel.
Yeah, point taken. Point taken. Yeah.
But
Hello, sir.
All right.
what are the answers?
So,
Yeah, point taken. I mean how it's I mean, you can talk and talk and talk, but as you yourself said, we need to galvanize ourselves. We need to politicize ourselves. We need to socialize ourselves. Yeah.
okay. I would like to
Sir,
read the
sir,
next question.
Sir Padmanabhan
Uh,
from Andhra Pradesh.
Let her read the question and then you ask Padma. Yeah.
Okay.
I will get done with reading the questions, and there are people who want to speak to you, so probably they can speak after that. Thank you so much. I would like. Okay, someone has turned off my microphone. All right, I will
No, I
ask
can hear
you.
you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask you a question from Yadnesh. He is asking, right to dignity is a part of right to life. How is it related to equality with respect to persons with special disabilities?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, I could not speak much about dignity. Dhananjay Chandrachud has used dignity a lot recently in many judgments. Dignity is a principle, which determines the equal worth to be given to every human beings, irrespective of our differences. Why we should be, why we should feel that we are all equal amongst one another, because of the principle of dignity. Dignity provides you the bedrock to treat every human being at par with one another. So, for example, only because of the idea of dignity, that you would say that just because somebody's height is lesser, or somebody is a dwarf, or somebody is less good looking, his color complexion is different, etc., or he cannot speak, he cannot see, etc., all these things, these are all externalities. But when it comes to humanness, everybody is blessed with the same soul. When it comes to soul is not different. So everybody is blessed with similar soul, and therefore dignity demands, the demand of dignity is to foster respect for the equal treatment to souls, right? So therefore it is a very important principle. It attaches intrinsic value to the human beings. So for example, if I were to give you a very simple example, when a law was enacted in Germany, whereby authority was given to the military to bring down a plane if on board, if such a plane were to be used by the terrorist, like it was used during the 9/11 scenario. This law was struck down by German Constitutional Court as unconstitutional on the ground that you are trying to use the people on board the train as a means. And the Constitutional Court of the Germany very clearly said that the principle of human dignity, which is one of the most important constitutional values, it prohibits every civilized state from using human beings as a means. Right? So for a good cause or for bad cause, you cannot use human beings as a means. Every human being is free being. He has the choice. He is an autonomous person. Therefore, I thank the person who asked this question. Dignity adds value in the life of everybody as a human person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Asha asked, do you think Hindu Inheritance and in brackets removal of disabilities Act to 1828 was helpful in providing disabled people their rights in Hindu joint family property? This act also did not cover congenital lunacy.
I mean, I don't know. Every law has its weaknesses. Every law has some strengths. Frankly speaking, I have not read that law. But I think there is no point attributing much wisdom to the colonial legislature, right? After all, even if the law might have been somehow empowering for the disabled, the empowerment might have been accidental. Because I don't think Britishers were mindful about the empowerment of disability. Right?
Okay. So Vikrant asked, if the reservation in legislature slash parliament for a person with disability is made within the existing sets of reservation without disturbing existing scheme of reservations, that is SC, ST, OBC, will it have any constitutional challenge?
Well, in my opinion, even in the legislatures, reservation can be provided to the people with disabilities, because there is a reservation for SCs and STs, and the political parties may take a decision. Okay, while selecting SC/ST candidates, will ensure that some of the SC/ST are also people with disabilities. So you take into account the intersection, in fact, because reservation is required for who are the weakest, who are the most vulnerable. So if a person is SC and if he is still disabled also, so a disabled SC or a disabled ST, you are doing a great service to the country. You are truly using the reservation for its real. You are serving the real objective of reservation by providing the same to such group, right? So it is possible, but you need political will.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question is by Srinivas Reddy. He's a solicitor from London. He asks, can you please let us know whether there are any laws regarding protection against disability discrimination in India?
Well, now there is a law in India, Rights of Persons with Disability Act, and this law was enacted by Parliament in 2016, and Section 5 of this law, I will quickly tell you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Section 5. Section 5, I will very quickly read for his benefit. Section 5 says that the person with disabilities shall have the right to live in the wrong section. Yeah. Section 3. Section 3. I will read. Yeah. Section 3. Section 3. The appropriate government shall ensure that the person with disabilities enjoy the right to equality, life with dignity and respect for his or her integrity equally with others. The appropriate government shall take steps to take steps to utilize the capacity of persons with disabilities by providing appropriate environment, and most importantly, no person with disability shall be discriminated on the ground of disability unless it is shown that shown that impugn act or omission is a proportionate measure for achieving a legitimate aim. Now, the problem with this section is the latter part. Although the discrimination on the ground of disability is prohibited, equally the section allows the state to, discriminate with people with disability if it wants to, if it demonstrates that it wants to achieve what it calls the proportionate, if it wants to achieve any measure which is proportionate, for which discrimination on the ground of disability is proportionate. What measures you would like to take for which you discriminate with disabled? I want to ask, but I think some of this particular clause 3 of Section 3 of persons with rights of persons with disabilities.
Sir, Professor, sir, I have a small question, sir. Can you please allow me?
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
the different members will be selected for the Rajya Sabha and MLCs from different fields. Why not from the field of disabilities? Is there any opportunity? Is there any scope according to laws?
Well, if you look at the provisions of nomination, art, science, these are sports. These are some of the areas from where the people can be nominated. So, if a person with disability, for example, is a social worker like Mr. Skerunta or others, there is a case made out for their nomination. So, I tell you, if government wants, there are many ways of doing it.
Sir,
Okay.
this is Padmanabhan from Andhra Pradesh. Sir, is there any procedure for penalizing the people who discriminated the disabled?
Yes. The Rights of Persons with Disability Act now has provisions for even jailing the people who would try to use the disabled, who discriminate with people with disabilities. Yes, there are provisions. Yeah, you can see the last chapter of persons with rights of persons with disability. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. We will have the last question now. Rohit asks, will the usage of the terminology persons with special abilities instead of persons with disabilities help destigmatize that section of our society substantially?
Well, as Shakespeare said, what lies in name, right? So whether you call
Right.
specially able, differently able, or whatever, I have never understood in my entire life how abilities can be special or different. Abilities are abilities. I mean, if somebody says, okay, he has a special knowledge of Constitution, then I will be horrified. I have the knowledge of Constitution. Why to prefix it with some terms like special or different, etc., etc. So these are all tactics to somehow divide the community, somehow maintain this distance between the so-called non-disabled and the disabled. So let's call spade a spade. I would be happy to be called blind rather than to be called as person with remaining sight. Very jargons. If they say, don't say you are blind. Say that I am a person with remaining sight. So these are all jargons. Let's go beyond jargons and achieve something real and substantial. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a wonderful session, Dr. Jain. I hope all of you enjoyed our session today. I would like to thank Jain sir for his time and agreeing to join us on such short notice and enlightening us on this topic. I thank Think India Pune team and all the participants for joining us all over. For joining us today. I think participants have joined us all over India, so that's great. Thank you and have a great evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. ಇದು ತೆಗಿಬೇಕಲ್ಲ ಶಿವನ್.